Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you to this session of where we're going to present you productivity enhancements in operative planning. My name is Konrad Volkmann. I'm Principal Program Management Lead from the manufacturing team in Copenhagen at the MDCC. We're the R&D team responsible for the planning and manufacturing functionality in AX. And I'd like to present you Christian Ritt.
Yep, so my name is Christian Ritt. I also work as a program manager at the R&D Center in Copenhagen in Denmark. I'm responsible for the planning functionality and also the forecasting. Yep, so with that, let's get started. Before I start though, I have to show this disclaimer. It's we're not really showing R3 in this session. It's called R2, but we are doing it on a R3 environment, so I was told to show this. But now you've seen it, you know it, you've probably seen it before. It's in all the PowerPoint decks here. So, to the agenda. We will be looking at the productivity enhancement for the production planner. There are 4 things that we'll be looking into. One is a new capability that was introduced in R2, the explanation of the master planning results. Some of you might once, maybe even twice, maybe multiple times, have wondered, why did I get this exact result out of the planning engine? Now we have created something that's trying to explain you that in a common language. The next thing is an easy way to understand and visualize and even apply action messages. Action messages, let's wind back a bit. What is that? Action messages, that's the system messages telling you how you can actually optimize your supply schedule. So it can tell you to increase an order, decrease an order, move it forward, move it back, maybe even cancel it. So we'll try to optimize it. And now we have created a tool where you can automatically apply these changes to the orders with one click. And on top of that, we have some visualization where you can see the dependency between actions. Because if you cancel one order, it might have impact on other. The third thing is an easy way to persist selection. It's not really a planning tool, it's more like a general tool, but it happened to be on the planned orders that it's implemented by default. It can also be done other places in the system. I'll get back to that. Then in the end, Konrad, he will talk about capable to promise and how to utilize event Kanbans with these. So I think that's like the overall for the agenda, so let's dive into it. Explanation of the MRP result. What you see here, this little screenshot I have, is actually some of the explanations. So what did we do? We created something that will give you a sequential, meaning at runtime, when the planning engine is generating all the suggestions, it will record what it's doing and try to write it down for you. This can either be viewed directly in the client if you use Explosion, or you can switch it on for the entire master schedule. But if you do it for the entire master schedule, you will have a lot of data. So it's very good for analyzing stuff, but if you want to see just for one order, it's very easy to do it with the Explosion, and you'll see it right away in the client. So we tried to translate it into a user language, meaning that it's not saying I go from the rectrans table to the this, and I do this and that, and then I have a if, then else, and so on. It's not like that. It's really trying to do it in a user language. As I mentioned, there are 2 options to do this. Either you do it from the Explosion. This works. You don't have to do anything, just check mark it, and it works. but explosion is done for one order at a time. The other option, that is to use the event viewer, and then you can do it for a full master planning run. There's a blog here. I expect that you will all get access to this material afterwards, and you can go to that blog and see exactly how that is done. I have one slide here showing the basics of it. So basically, you will go to the performance monitor, and you have to select this MRP property. This will enable the tracing for MRP. When you have that, it will generate you one or multiple files where you can see all the events that happened, and you can then go to the event viewer and see the result. So this way you can dive into a full MRP run. Of course, this will come with a cost. It's not something you should have switched on all the time, especially not if you have, you could say, a long-running master schedule. It will just take even longer with this turned on. But it's very good to turn it on once in a while if you want to analyze something. That was the fastest animation ever. OK. Never mind that. So we have Susan here. She looks at, I have a scenario here that I want to show you, basically. So we have Susan here, and she's using the explosion log from a sales order because she wants to understand why is it that I cannot deliver as the customer would like me to. In this scenario, she then used that information to contact procurement. As this is Atlanta, magic happens. Procurement can fix the issue, and they can actually get it earlier, and she can deliver to the customer. So for this scenario, also for you to have it later, I have some funky stuff here. I'm pressing a few times, seeing, I think the animation happened without anything happened. I don't know. This one worked. OK. So here we have the sales order Susan created. It's for 15 pieces. It's for the item number 1,000. Susan is running with capable to promise capabilities here, meaning that once she generates the sales order, the system will check, are we actually capable to promise this? And you can see all the dates with the yellow triangles are indicating days where she is not able to deliver this order. So she checks that today is a few days ago. We have the 3rd of October here. The customer wanted it on the 8th, but she's not able to deliver it until the 16th. She would really like to deliver to this customer. So she goes to the explosion from the sales order. You can open the explosion directly for this sales order. And here you see on the left side that I have a enable trace check mark. It's actually outside the form. I just zoomed in on it. On the requirement calculation there. She enables that. I'll show it in AX in a minute. So now she noticed that there is an action date on one of the components needed for this product. She can see it's the item 1001. So with this information, she goes to the explanation. In here, she starts to get all the explanation. I will show you this in AX in a minute. But as you can see here, it's telling her that when she opens the future messages for this one item, it's setting the future messages for this receipt, which is the sales order. The futures dates are set based on today's date, scheduled forward according to order margin, lead time of 10, purchase calendar, production. The order is delayed since future date is greater than requirement date. But she noticed here that the lead time is 10 days. So with a 10-day lead time, she would never be able to deliver this. But she also remembers that this item, we changed the vendor recently. So she contacts procurement to check if this lead time actually still is valid. And talking to procurement, she learns that she could actually get it in a day. So procurement update the purchase order here. And with that, she can go back to the explosion, and you can see that the futures message up here is now green, meaning that she can deliver on time, so everyone is very happy. Let me show you what that looks like exactly in AX. Here we go. So I will jump to a sales order. Let's take this one here. Here I have an order for 15 pieces of this HDMI cable. And if I want to figure out what's behind the explosion, so basically, maybe I should explain, an explosion is like a mini plan for this one order. Explosion, it's a funny word in English that we use it here. Nothing is really exploding. I hope not, at least. But it's like unfolding the entire bill of material tree, exploding it that way. So it's like if you have the item here, you have different components, it will explode the entire bill of material tree and plan everything underneath it. So now here on the explosion, for this one, we can go in, and you can see that when I update it, if I want to update it, I can enable the trace here. So this is actually where I control if I want to have this explanation or not. So let us just do that. And that's done. I'll go to the explanation tab here. You can see that I have some information here. It's grouped: coverage planning, futures messages, and actions messages. This is the way planning is sequenced. First, you do the coverage planning, futures messages, and then in the end, the actions. So if we open the coverage, we need a HDMI cable. And you can see here, it's saying issue must be covered. It's a sales order, dimension side 1, warehouse 11, the requirement date, and the quantity. Then it starts searching for open receipts on the same warehouse from today and until the end of where it should be searching. It didn't find anything. Based on that, it's creating a new planned order. It's a planned purchase order with the same dimensions for the same quantity. And it's even telling me that the order quantity was based due to the coverage code requirement. So I also know why did it actually order 15. I didn't have like a minimum of 20 or anything like that. If it rounded up, it would tell me here I changed the 15 to 20 because of this. You can see it's picking everything, and the order is fully fulfilled. So it's all done. On the futures messages down here, you can see that it's also setting some futures. Futures is based on today, scheduled forward, and again the margins and so on. And it is not delayed as the date is the same as the requirement date. So everything is fine here. And the same with the actions. You could go in and see if you have any actions here. And again, everything is fine down here. So this was a very simple one. And you could say, okay, salesperson, would she really look through all of this? Probably not. Let's take a more complicated one. So let's take this one for a Contoso retail in Miami. On this one here, let's take the explosion again. See, this is a bit more complex product that we're looking at here. I'll just update with enabled trace here. Now, if I look at the explanation, you see the same in the beginning. But when I start to unfold it, you will realize that in this, I have like tons of information. I would never be able to figure out why this is delayed or I would. It would just take some time. So find text. I'm right here. Delay. I'm looking for delays. Whoop, there's a delay here. It jumps to the text, tell me exactly. This order is not delayed since we have future states. Okay, moving on to the next delay in the text. Whoop, and so on. So I can easily go through the text, searching for known words that I know. I'm looking for this type of information. This makes it very fast to go through the entire information. So you had delay, I don't know, a few places here. 7 places, I think. But if I go back again, you can see a lot of it didn't even open because this one didn't have the word delay in it. So it's still closed. Okay. I think that was the explanation here. Yep. I hope you liked it. Visualize and apply action messages. So, what can we do with this? So now that we have a plan, we also tend to get some action messages. Before AX 2012, meaning up until 2009, these had to be applied manually, meaning it was just a list of suggestions of where you had to change supply orders. And then you would have to go in manually and change the purchase orders, the production orders, and so on. Now with this apply action message, it will do it for you with one click. And then we also added a graphical view to see it more clearly. So this graphical view will actually show you all the interdependent relationships between the actions. Let's say that I cancel a purchase order. I have to make sure that I didn't need this for any production or anywhere else in the system, that I'm not relying on this material. At least I need to understand that I'm not breaking anything, because maybe I only wanted to do this, but not some of the other actions. So I need to see if I do this action, I should also do these other actions. And that's where this action graph is helping me out. The second part was the automatic apply action with one click. So let me jump in and show you that. Here we go. So I will go to master planning. And we will look at the actions. So these are all my actions. And let's say we take, I found one that was fairly easy. Down here, this one. This is the action graph. So now, this is an action to cancel planned order for the product D4. It's the production order 3365 down here. I can see that. You can see it selected here. These are all my bum lines that will be affected if I cancel this one. And these are the purchase orders that we have created because we had a requirement for this production order. So you can see if I go to this is marked. It's telling me that it's linked to this bill of material line that is then linked to the planned production order. And over here, I have all the actions where I need to do some action if I want to do any of these. If I only do part of them, it would not really make sense because it would be an unbalanced plan that I have. As you noticed, I could zoom in and out. For this one, it's not that important, but I will show you one in a minute where it's a bit more important. This is a fairly simple one. You can see I have a planned production order with 6 components, and 2 of them I have planned purchase orders for them. So on this one, let's say that we apply this one here. I can say that, do I want to delete the purchase orders if all lines are removed? We could say yes. So basically, if I don't say yes here, I will delete the lines, but I will keep the header. And the same for transfer orders. So let's go ahead and remove this one. We can take the next one as well. Or we could go up here and say that we apply to the planned production order. And I do this. By doing it on a higher level, it also took all the underlying levels and applied it. So when you're on the action graph, you can actually do applying for multiple orders by taking it on a higher level. Let's try and take this one. I think this one was a bit more complex. Now you see here that I have a few more lines here. If I click here, it will become very small for the people in the end. If I start to zoom in here, you can see that it's the same thing I'm looking at, and it's actually showing me all the relations in this fairly complex setup that I have here. I can also jump down here from one order to another, and it will jump through the tree and show me any of the orders. So in this way, you can easily navigate around in a complex tree, zoom in, zoom out. Maybe you want to see all of it. Where was this located? Or you can gradually zoom in on it, like this. You can scroll from one side to the other, and so on. From this one, you can also open it requirement, explosions, and so on. So that was the actions. Now, what else did we do? Oh, I forgot this one. So basically, I had a slide showing you what I was doing. So in R2, he wanted to cancel a production order. I found that for you. And we actually canceled the production order and the two related purchase orders for the components, ensuring that we didn't have these two purchase orders hanging in the system. And eventually, they might be ordered and delivered, but we didn't need them because now we didn't have the production order anymore. So that was kind of like this scenario. The last thing that I want to show you before I hand it over to Conrad here, that is the persisting selection of orders in a list page. So you probably all tried to go to a list page. Maybe you do some selection. You want to dive into some of the functionality there. Maybe you open an order from the list, and your selection is gone. Kind of annoying. We did a bit of changes to that. So if I go to the planned orders here, maybe I should, before I go there, I have this one slide saying that when you want to use this, save your selection in list pages, you should go in on the license configuration and put a check mark on the selection list usage. If you don't have this, you don't see it at all. So this is the place to go and enable this functionality. And also, I'll get back to it, but for now, it's just available on the planned orders, but it could be used anywhere in AX. There's a blog about how you can enable this on other list pages as well. So now I'm here on my planned orders, my planned production, planned orders in general, actually. Let's say I select this line here, here, and here. And now I want to open the planned order here to get more details on it. I'll double-click, and you probably saw it already, all my selections are gone. Now I can view the details here, but when I close it and get back, my selections are gone. The same would happen. Let's say I select these and this one here, and I go out, I want to go to actions to see something, and I go back to my planned orders, and they're all gone again, because it doesn't remember the selection. So this is what the feature is all about. Let's say now that we say that we want to see this one, we want to see this one, this one, this one, and this one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 5 lines selected. Now I can say add to selection. It changed a bit up here with the icons. Notice that now I can view my selection, I can remove from the selection, I can clear selection, and I can view unselected. Let's say that we want to view the selection. Boom. Now I'm only see the 5 that I selected. I go out here to actions, for instance. I go back again. Nothing happened. I'm not getting sweaty here. This is the intention. So now it's showing me what it used to be. But if I click View Selection, I will see the same 5 lines again. I can keep working on it. So I could view the unselected lines here. I could add, let's say, another bunch of lines here, maybe like this. I can add them to the selection. Now when I view the selection, you can see I have all the lines in here. I can select a number of lines, just something so you can see that I'm actually removing it. Here we go. Again, I can view the unselected. Now I have a lot of lines here, but if I didn't have that many, it would make sense maybe to select half of it, and so on. So you can actually save a selection and go back and continue working on it, which I think is a quite neat feature we got there. Of course, let's say that I want to, if I'm viewing here, if I want to clear the selection, I don't need it anymore. I just click clear. And you can see now I cannot view the selection or view unselected again. I can just add to a new selection. I'm pretty sure that it's hooked up on the line number here. So yeah, most likely it would. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't know what, yeah. But you could say for other lists that you have in AX, you would not, I mean, this is a bit of a special list that we have here. Yep. I think I will hand it over to Conrad, and I think we will leave some time in the end for a few questions. So with that, let me go back here. Oh, I forgot one thing. Sorry, Conrad. I promised you that this could be added to other places. This is the blog where you can go and find information about that if you want to have it added to other lists in AX. So now with that, here you go, Conrad.
Thank you, Christian. So now we want to talk a little bit about 2 topics that have been on our minds for, we can actually say, a couple of years now. When we released AX 2012, we actually first introduced the capable to promise scenario, where you can basically use capable to promise as a delivery date control, which will run the explosion and actually give you the best possible date according to the master planning, to what we call the dynamic plan. Since then, we actually have improved the solution with more or less with every minor release. So with R2, we did a big change to actually introduce a better integration into event Kanbans. Because obviously, capable to promise and event Kanbans is something that actually often goes together. So basically, capable to promise and event Kanbans are 2 important instruments to support build to order scenarios, and they're now combined since R2. So the delivery date control, capable promise that updates the dynamic plan, and use the resulting future state to determine the confirmed ship date. And then the event Kanbans that created on sales order entry for build-to-order scenarios, where we have, basically in our scenario, you have sales event Kanbans, and then even a second step Kanban line event Kanban. So it's a two-step build-to-order process that we're modeling here. So what we're showing here, and it's actually also true for what Christian showed us, is basically based on the actual R3 demo data. So this scenario is something you actually find in the actual demo data as well. And you can just, you can actually play with that, around with that. So in the demo data, you find a product L0026, which is a product that consists of a product L0025 and of a raw material M0025. This raw material has an initial purchase lead time of 10 days. And then I have a rather short process. So to update the software, it takes me 4 hours per job, and then it might be stay up to 1 day in the supermarket, and then I will have the test and pack activity after that. So when I enter a sales order, it will actually create a sales event Kanban and allocate a job to test and pack, and create a second Kanban line event Kanban for the update software. So let's look into the solution, how that looks like.
7.
So I'm going to the sales order and create a new sales order. In the shipping, I can select my default delivery date control, and I would like to say this is something, so this sales order is actually supposed to go in on Friday. So now I'm using my product L0026. And you can actually see this is actually a configured item. So it comes with 4 configurations. So I'm selecting configuration 1. If I'm now saving this sales line, it comes up with a delivery date control form that tells me I can only do this, I can only promise the 18th. So I will use that date and say update the confirmed ship date. So now let's see why that actually happened. So we're going to look in our explosion. So remember that with the CTP, the dynamic plan is updated on order taking. So you can look in the explosion right away, and you have all the future state and all the explosion already updated. This fact also means something to the way you're actually modeling and configuring your system. I mean, since this happens on saving the sales order line, you're running an explosion in the back end. You should be very cautious when you model that you're not exploding all the time like through 50 levels, because obviously that would have a performance impact. And it's not something we can actually take away. It's going to be there. So from the modeling perspective, this is something that actually should be used wisely and not kind of for all scenarios. The other part is obviously where CTP actually chips in is that CTP does a full explosion. That means it creates new planned orders. It's a massive difference to the alternative, which is ATP, which would only look at available supply, available on hand, and available planned orders to supply, but it would never actually go deeper and actually create a new planned order. CTP is something that is very, very focused on build-to-order scenarios, so you probably don't have any planned supply for that, so we create a planned order for you. Or in the case that we actually see here, it would actually create, in the Kanban scenario, it would actually create a real Kanban, would actually firm that Kanban. So now the reason, obviously, why we have that delay is that we didn't have anything on hand, and we called it out in the beginning that there's actually a 10 days lead time on the purchase order. So that planned purchase order that is created is the one that pushes out the whole production for 10 days now. The specialty about this scenario versus a kind of a scenario when we only have planned orders is that the Kanban is actually already a firmed order. Usually we don't move firmed orders when this happens. And this is something you also need to keep in mind if you're using CTP in combination with production orders and firming of production orders, that the firm production orders will not be moved and will not be rescheduled on CTP, whereas planned production orders can be. So you need to actually rethink, if you're using CTP, rethink the firming horizons, the automatic but also the manual firming horizons, because that's where planning could actually start operating and change something. So what happens if, in our scenario here, is that the planned purchase order comes up with a future date and say, this Kanban cannot be done as originally planned. So behind the scene is actually replanning the Kanban to a different date. And then it does the same thing for the upstream Kanban. With a result that we're looking into what we call the Kanban pegging tree. You can actually see a little bit of more details of that both are actually now scheduled for the 17th. I will just, before I move on, create a second one with a different configuration. And it's basically giving me the same result. A couple of comments on CTP is that you can use the line delivery details to actually monitor the requested ship date and the confirmed ship date. Intentionally, we actually give you both options. When you come through the form, you can choose whether you want to, because you're in the sales order taking process, you can choose whether you want to update the requested ship date or the confirmed ship date. Of course, you kind of, the original intent of the customer was the original requested ship date, and that might be important for you if you get more. If the planner actually gets more capabilities or gets other options to actually document that original requested ship date. You can simulate the delivery date control, and we also actually added a possibility to run this confirmation on a whole sales order. What does that mean? I mean, you've seen the impact of that. You're entering a sales order line, it runs the explosion. You enter the second one, it runs the explosion. You can also do it the other way around. You can actually enter all sales order lines without the explosion. And then with this form, you can overwrite what you have so far and change the whole sales order to CTP now and run the CTP for all lines at once. You can check it off and say, if I've done that, I can update the sales order line that from that moment on, it would always apply on any change, it would run the CTP check again. I can check off if I allow multiple deliveries. If I allow multiple deliveries, the result will be calculated line by line, and each line would get the best delivery date. If it's not checked, it would come up with the worst delivery date, of course, and say, this is where I can do the full order. And I can run this with a simulation by actually checking everything off. Then it would just run, calculate, give you a list of what you can do, but it would not do any update. So you can basically run this as a sort of simulation. As we just said, the worst date, you can actually limit that worst date and say, well, if it's beyond that date, then it wouldn't make any sense at all. So you could put in a date there, and then it would just limit that to that date. So this is a little bit showing the capabilities of CTP. So now we're going to move over from the sales order to the Kanban. Just showing a little bit of insight on what it actually means to have a two-step process in the Kanban. Well, basically one thing is pretty important on CTP. You have a question?
In the case that you've got a separate legal entity that's doing the manufacturing,
yeah.
Does capable to promise work across separate legal entities?
Unfortunately, no.
Okay.
I'm not fully. So it doesn't actually trigger the explosion through to the other legal entity. What it actually does is that if the dynamic plan of the supplying company is actual, and usually I would hope it is actual, it could peg against available supply in that delivering company. So if that delivering company may have the available supply, then it would peg against that, and that would have an impact on your result. Right. But it would not carry it forward to actually explode through multiple companies right now. We've discussed that with a lot of our customers so far, that there obviously is the wish to have that. We're still kind of a little bit thinking about how we can actually limit it to make that performance impact manageable somehow, because this is kind of the downside. But yeah,
thank you.
This is the situation right now. So let's get back to the Kanban execution and planning. So one thing that is important for CTP, if you want to consider the capacity of the work cell, the job in the CTP result, you need actually to implement it with automatic planning, so that when the sales order is created, it creates the jobs, it plans them, and then explodes forward on the plan. So the first trial that AX would do is first of all would allocate the last work cell and said, when can I do it there, create the job, and explode backwards from them. So the first trial would already be corrected by the capacity of the work cell. And there's a couple of influencing factors. I'm going to come back on that one. If you're not interested in the capacity in the CTP, if you're saying I have always a capacity for this work cell, you would just switch the auto planning off, and that would basically mean that you don't consider the capacity there. It would obviously go quicker, because as I said before, if the material is causing a delay, it would cause within the sales order creation process the already planned job to be moved backwards. So that's kind of happening under the scene. The other thing you can actually see pretty nicely here is that what happens actually in a scenario where we have multiple activities with a Kanban line event. So I'm looking at the work cell that does the finished product, and we have seen that it depends on another item that is also built to order through a Kanban line event. And it shows you that I can't actually complete or start this because it is dependent on another Kanban, and I can see that other Kanban in the packing. It could be one or it could be multiple, obviously. You can actually see that there's a dependency upstream for that. Go here. So let's have a quick jump into the Kanban rules and the other Kanban settings that influence the behavior of CTP. For Kanban, one of the massive or fundamental planning parameters is what we call the production flow model, and that is something you can assign to every work cell. Every work cell can have a different model. So what is important to say is that this is the parameter that actually directs the Kanban planning and say, what happens if I don't have enough capacity on the specific day or week? You can select the periods to be days or weeks. So if I can, usually what I'm doing is the postpone action, and postpone means that all the demand that is actually planned together can either be placed on this period, or it has to be postponed to the other period. Which obviously, if there's not enough capacity on that period, it would look for an earlier period. If there's none, it would move it backwards. You can use the other options that said cancel, which basically doesn't allow you to plan, add to the requested period, which basically overloads the plan, and distribute. This allows you to actually distribute the different jobs that are within one plan on different days. And then finally, the planning time frames in days. This is where the automatic planning would actually go in. And beyond that, any demand beyond that would not be automatically planned by capacity. And then finally, just a short look into the Kanban rules here. So you can actually find that. So this is the production flow in the demo data that actually represents that. And you can see that it consists of two event rules. The first one, actually it's the other one. So for the L26 is an automatic rule, a sales event rule. The second one is a Kanban line event rule, also an automatic one. What you can observe here is that an event rule, as I'm using configurations here, I can create an event rule that is valid for all possible configurations. So that's actually a pretty powerful possibility for configuring, especially configuration-based or any kind of dimension-based supply on events. Okay. So what we've just seen here is that capable to promise what happens when you create an order, and in our case, where actually the planned purchase order that is created under the hood would go in and push forward the Kanbans and actually replan them to the right date. So the end result of that would be that you get the best data that it's possible from capacity point of view. It's also possible from material point of view. So yeah, so let's kind of comment on performance. Obviously, the more available supply you already have in your supply chain, the shorter will be the explosion run. And it also means that you would need to look into your firming horizons and all these kind of things pretty closely. One fundamental difference between using Kanbans for this and firming production orders is that if you enter a sales order line with a wrong quantity and you adjust the quantity, it would just go back and readjust the Kanbans. It would even delete Kanbans, it would remove them just when you change them. Whereas if you're using production orders and use the firming fences there, it would not automatically unfirm the production order. You would need to, basically, you would get an action message and say you don't need that anymore, and we need to react on the action message. All right, so there's actually a last topic we would like to explain to you, because it's actually an interesting story. We discussed with one of our customers actually in the room here, and we actually found out that it's actually, we need both behaviors. That's really crazy, but it is true. So that's why we just want to discuss that here. So if you run CTP, let's just imagine you have a CTP case where you're placing an order, like on this orange bar here, you place a new order. The situation at that time is that you have a little bit of on hand, and you have two purchase orders or two production orders also placed for that. So far, the reaction was that it would actually by default start pegging the on hand and the supply A, and it would create you an action message to cancel on supply B. And now we can actually discuss is that right or wrong, but it actually would basically, for the CTP scenario, I mean for the master scheduling explosion, there's no issue with that. But for the CTP scenario, if you use CTP, you actually want this on hand not to be blocked by something that you need much later. So if you would now get a new order that is actually coming in before this supply A and B, it would actually be pegged and blocked by that, and it would actually create you a new planned order after your lead time. And that is not the expected or kind of what you would wish to do in a CTP scenario. So for CTP use case, it is actually important that it actually happens the other way around, that the on-hand inventory might actually be allocated later and kept free. So if you would now enter that order, it would actually be pegged to the supply A and B instead of the on-hand, because it would basically peg to the latest possible supply and not for the earliest possible supply in the action period. And it would then give you the possibility, if you place a new order, that the on-hand, the new order that comes earlier can actually be fulfilled. So you have a better availability in the CTP case. The price that you pay with that is that you actually don't get this action message anymore on the supply B, because it's fully packed. And you might need to take an action on excess inventory. So this use case is obviously something where you have a more quick turning inventory, and where you assume that also your positive days are really serious. It's what you mean. So if you have inventory and your positive days don't reach that inventory, you want it for real that this inventory stays there, because you might get other orders in. So we had a couple of back and forth, and we decided actually to introduce in R3, we're going to come with a configuration based on the item coverage group, where you can select the behavior. So it's either or, and you can configure that on coverage group level and on plan.
You can do it on the item, on the coverage group level, and on the plan, yeah. But one thing I'm not certain it will make it into R3, but it will be released as a hotfix.
If it doesn't make it into R3, then look out for the possible hotfix if you want the old behavior. All right, so with that, we would like to wrap up the session for today.
Yep, so in the beginning I was talking a bit about how we can explain the planning behavior, what it's actually doing. Especially on the explosion, it's very easy to go into the client and see it, where you see a description of exactly what the planning engine was doing. Then I showed you the action graph, where you can actually see all the actions, how they're related together, and you have this option to basically, with one click, apply the action. I showed you how to filter with the selection list, or not filter, but select in a list, and save that selection. And there's a blog explaining how you can actually take this to other pages. And before Conrad gets to talk about the last part, I would like to mention that if you're interested in what's going on in R3, there is a session tomorrow in this room at 2 p.m. Where I will talk for an hour about demand forecasting, which is a brand new feature that enables you to generate a demand forecast based on historical transactions. So we basically have an engine that's calculating a forecast for you. It's fairly advanced. It will take it to Excel, where you have the possibility to edit it and bring it back into AX. But that's tomorrow at 2 p.m. in this room. Yep.
Yeah, so the last thing I want to mention for the CTP and event campaigns is that there's actually a white paper explaining both concepts and kind of also explain how they best work together. And there's also a couple of articles on that topic on our manufacturing blog that we hope you will visit and get into discussion with us. So with that, I open up for last questions if there are any.
Is there any plans to put the Explain tab on net requirements?
If there are plans to do what on the net requirements?
To add that Explained tab
On
the net requirements form?
It's, yeah, the thing is we have it where we plan it, and on the net requirement we don't plan it, we just show it. So you could, but it's a good input, I would say.
Yep.
And we want to get it out to more areas of AX. This is like the first step, because with 2012 it kind of became a black box also for the partners. So that's what we're trying to help with here. But very good input. We'll look at that.
Anything else?
So if I look at the list of open sales orders or production orders, is there a way I can see without drilling into each order which ones have an exception and what that exception is?
So when you say exception, you mean like a delay?
Yes.
So,
Either a material shortage or a capacity issue.
So you can actually get a list of all the futures messages that you have in the system, and you can see it from that. So you could put a filter on all sales orders with futures, all the sales lines with futures on them, and you can see it from that.
So, but not, I can't, if I'm looking at a specific list of sales orders, I've got to drill into each one.
Yeah, you can filter on that list. You basically, I mean, it's by order, and I think you can.
Yeah, but I don't. You're asking if we can actually see it on the sales order list?
Yes. Like
Yeah, no,
maybe an icon that was red or
Yeah.
something on the left-hand side, and I could hover over
No,
it.
actually, right now, it's not like showing up right away on the list. Yeah.
But
Okay.
again, very good input.
Yeah.
You might
Sure.
find it in the
And
next
then
version.
regarding the capacity to promise, did I hear you say that it only works on automated released orders? So if I
No. Capable to promise would use the planned order, and what I'm actually was trying to say is that you should actually work on planned order as long as you can before you firm, because the planned order is something that can always be moved. So if a planned order gets a future state, it would actually move the planned order to that future date. So we move to the date where it can be done. Whereas if a firm production order get a future state, that won't happen. It would just give you an action, but it would still kind of sit there, and so that is why I'm saying you should actually not firm too early in the CTP environment.
Okay, and is that CTP used by the sales rep or the CSR who's managing the sales orders, or is it a planning function?
It's a planning function. I mean, you can default the setting down to the item. When is it actually happening? Which items are actually sold on CTP? It's not by order taker or something like that.
Okay.
I mean,
So we have seen a lot of visual, representations and let's say the explanations. Pretty much, it's translating the old logic that we have almost over a decade. So it's actually translating things and telling the planners what they should do rather than just looking at the messages and future messages and, figure out what's going on. So the question that I'm going to ask is that, did we change anything in the MRP logic or engine to enhance and do it? Or are we just taking the old MRP logic and just translating things in a format that people, actually users, can read it better? Is there any changes in the MRP engine or enhancements?
In which time frame?
R3. Well,
in R3, no. So we don't have fundamental changes in the logic in R3. So there was the last really big fundamental architectural change in master scheduling was the introduction of the scheduling engine with AX 2012, where the scheduling engine is actually what does the resource allocation on the ground. That has been totally rewritten and re-implemented there. And with resources and resource capabilities, you have a lot of more functionality and also the capabilities to actually make a better plan on top of that. But we did not do fundamental changes to that in the R2 or R3 time frame.
So let's say master plan, forecast plan.
Yeah.
We
did, however, do a long set of specific scenarios from customers. I mean, we're constantly working on customer feedback, on scenarios that are actually taken in, and then consider, is that a scenario that is actually important? And we also did a lot of single DCRs in that area that continuously flow into the product to support specific scenarios better.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I think we are starting to run out of time here. So
thank you for being here. Have a good evening.
yeah, thank you.